I've got three real experts which I'd like to welcome up on stage. And the first one to help me is Mike Brockman, who's the CEO of InsureTheBox. He's an actuary by background. He founded InsureTheBox in May 2009 as our first telematics only insurer, and they started selling in June 2010, and they've now sold over 100,000 policies. So let's welcome up the first panel member, Mike Brockman, please. They're all the same price, you get to choose the first one. Now if I was Devon Brown, I'd say underneath the envelope, there is an envelope that says you'd have sat in that place. Our next expert to help us is Ian Thompson, Director of Personal Motor Claims at RSA. He's been with RSA for over 17 years. He's also a Director of Thatcham, and he's responsible, many responsibilities include responsibility for RSA's owned body shop group. Big hand please for Ian Thompson. Now you can sit next to Mike and be friendly. It's a real test, isn't it? Someone will make something out of all this. And our third expert to help us is Alan Cotrill. Alan is Commercial Director of Trak Global. He had 11 years with Telematics UK, and then established Trak in 2009, and they've now sold over 20,000 telematics units. So a big hand please for Alan Cotrill. Anyway, you can now sit in the middle or on the chair on your own. Now that's the big debate for him. See no, hear no, and speak no. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you very much indeed for coming up and helping us with this. Now, let's start off with the title of today's debate, and we'd love to have audience participation as well. I think we should have two people racing around with microphones. Brent, I think Mark, Bull, and Rachel, I think, are going to be running around with microphones for us. So the programme for today is, with the rising cost of motor insurance featuring prominently in the media, telematics has been hailed by everyone, including David Cameron, as the silver bullet. So today's debate, we're going to look at whether claims are at the centre of the proposition, telematics, or if we've been overlooked in the rush to get to market. So let's start off with how big is the market for telematics. Mike, you sold over 100,000 policies. But how many do you think are there in total in the market? You haven't got 100,000 active policyholders at the moment, I don't think.
Well, I just listened to the previous speaker. I thought I'd do some of my own market research while he was speaking. How many policies did I actually sell while he was speaking? And we actually sold 10. So that weren't bad, was it? So, there must be some customers that do trust the box. Yeah, I think what I agreed from the previous presentation, it is all about what your proposition is. And I do agree that most insurers, when they design policies, design it for them and not the customer. So the first thing you have to do is think from a customer-centric point of view about what this policy is trying to offer. Why is it better than a conventional policy? And the important part of that, of course, is claims. And InsureTheBox, claims is a very, very important part of our service.
But nobody buys a policy expecting to make a claim, Mike.
They don't.
I buy a policy because I have a claim on 3rd of August, I think.
No, they don't. And that's not how you sell it. So the claims is a sort of hidden added benefit that they discover once they're bought it. It's a bit like an iPad. You know, when iPads first come out, you really didn't know how good they were until you had one. And once you've got it, you think, wow, I can't live without this. But when customers actually bought it, they sort of read about the technology, they thought it would be useful, but people didn't really know what it was.
Okay, so let's go on that track then. So why are they buying a telematics-based policy?
Because it offers them a competitive price.
Down to price again?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to Alan. Trak started off with its Trak product for tracking vehicles, as opposed to then developed to be a telematics insurance product. What's the difference between the two?
Actually, it's a computer. It's a computer that sits in
Can we get his sound adjusted, please? I don't think anyone can hear him, or it's not on.
Can you hear me?
That's better.
Whilst the boxes for the insurance market are different, actually they're just computers in cars that generate data.
And it's what you do with the data that adds the value. So Mike uses the data in a particular way. A fleet user will use the data in a different way. But it's, you know, for me, claims is so important. And some of the propositions in the UK market at the moment are not looking at the claims benefits. Because the data exists, they just ignore it. So if you're going to buy a 3D, tell you wear glasses. Because if you don't, you won't see the benefit.
Sure.
And it's like any piece of data, if you don't understand how that relates to the value of the claim or the value for the consumer, it's wasted. But in terms of the technology, it's just technology.
So are we suffering from a lack of an industry standard?
I think we're lacking from an industry understanding of how the data should be used for the benefit of the consumer. And actually what they are computers that say no. Because they say no, you do only do 6,000 miles a year, so when you say you do 5, you're lying. Or no, the car wasn't at the point that the accident was reported. So we're working with fleets now where almost 30% of third-party claims we're refusing because the car wasn't there. You know, the claims reported in Devon, we look at the data, the car's in Glasgow. How can that not be good for the consumer?
Okay.
Sure. Hopefully sort of answer that question from a practical point of view. I can give you a couple of examples. I think I mentioned this when I spoke last year's conference. You know, you get from a tracker point of view, there's a lot of confusion about what a tracker delivers and what a telematics box can deliver. And that confuses customers. And you know, we've had customers that phone up saying, my car's been stolen, and we say, have you tried looking in your garage? Or the more sophisticated ones are, my car's been stolen, have you been looking at your garage down the end of your garden? Because they somehow think that it's hidden away. And, you know, but in terms of the best story I can illustrate that is the difference between the conception of a tracker and a telematics box is that we had a case where a car broke down. And it was broken down on the road for about an hour. That car went straight to a repair shop because to get repaired. It was in the repair shop for about a night, and as it transpires, the cost of the repair was more than the value of the car. So what did he do? He drove the car straight to the breakers yard. Now, the breakers yard then said, well, because he said, well, I've got this box in the car. The guy at the breakers yard said, well, it doesn't matter. I'll tell you what I do. With these trackers, what happens with these trackers is that they switch it on when you report it stolen. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll crunch it up. And once it's all crunched up and there's no sort of car left, then you report it stolen. But what he didn't realise, therefore, that you can actually trail the whole history of driving right through to the repair shop, right to the breakers yard, and they wasn't aware that you could do that because they thought it was like a conventional tracker that you actually say, when my car's stolen, you phone them up and then they go and find it, and they don't hold that data real time forever for the prior period.
Right. Okay, good example. Ian, where do RSA stand at telematics at the moment?
I think we're like a lot of insurance companies that we're looking at it very keenly. We're trying to decide.
Aren't you a bit late?
Well, we actually went in, I think, the same time as Aviva did several years back, and both us and Aviva, I think Aviva lost a lot more money than we did. We lost money on it as well, because I think clearly the technology was at a different standard then, and again, the understanding was at a different level, and consumer acceptance was in a different place. So I think that's why there's a high degree of caution from insurers, some insurers, about entering into these.
But we've now got the government pushing it. David Cameron, the Prime Minister, said we should be offering it.
It's interesting in the context of what Ian said as to, in terms of consumer acceptance, as to whether or not David Cameron telling everybody it's a good idea is going to be positive for telematics or not, isn't it, really? But contextually, I think it seems to be considered as the silver bullet. And I can't see how it can be the silver bullet. You've got a lot of good reasons why telematics is a good development for the insurance industry, clearly for consumers. But you've got the whole question about acceptance. I think there's still debates to be had about, you know, at the moment it's self-selective, so consumers are saying, I know I'm a safe driver, therefore I'm willing to have a box in the car. Where do we get to in the market when all the safe drivers have got boxes in the cars and all the people who don't want boxes in the cars therefore must be unsafe drivers?
Didn't we have that same argument when Direct Line started? They only wanted to ensure nice, safe drivers.
So it will develop, and I think you mentioned standards. I think kind of telematics at the moment is the Wild West. There's a lot going on, a lot of technology coming out.
Are you suggesting Mr. Brockman's a cowboy?
I would never suggest that. I'd never suggest that. But you know, this is brave new world stuff. There is new developments, new companies starting up. The technology is evolving rapidly. I mean, even the tracking satellites, you know, the Galileo satellites that are going up at the moment is going to enhance that resolution in terms of your positioning down to within 1 metre. You've got not just telematic boxes, but now in-car entertainment being developed with GPS in, so you can get contextual marketing as you're driving along. This is not just about a box and what product comes off it. This is about a whole range of technology developing around the car and a whole range of developments around consumer attitude to this and also consumer engagement with technology.
So is the manufacturer going to beat you to it? Because there's a lot of discussion about the e-call system where it's automatically going to have a system built in the EC legislation that notifies the emergency services, isn't it? Can we have a microphone up again, please?
Are we on? Yep. Now, the guys in the room that are driving BMWs already have this technology. BMW already know where you are and can direct you to a garage to fill your car up. They know how much fuel's in your car. And they're probably holding that data. At the moment, they're not using it. And is there going to be a standard across manufacturers? Not that I understand manufacturers' data, David. Obviously, it's a bit of a challenge for me. But it's never really cohesive. And I think as an industry standard, we've got to understand what the problem is before we agree the standard for gathering the data.
I'm quite sort of vocal on this.
Can everyone hear me? I think it's absolutely absurd to be thinking of data standards. I mean, just think of the range of telematics options that you have even now. We use a box that goes in the car that's independent of the onboard computer, completely on the different flavours of information that you can get from different designs of boxes, even in that context, are hugely wide-ranging. You've then got the plug-in boxes which go straight into the onboard computer and links into all sorts of other information about the functionality of the car, whether you've got a seatbelt on, as you say, petrol consumption, all sorts of things that are related to the onboard computer. Then you've got Thompson type technology, which is out there now, GPS-based, and smartphone technology. They're all completely different. Then you've got to think of claims. This is a claims conference, but claims are the real key to me to make some of the economics of telematics to work.
Okay, I guess we'll be on real expenses in a moment, but let's go to Ian for a moment. So you're watching from the wings what's happening with telematics, as RSA.
To a degree. I mean, we're engaged with people to actually say, how do we make this product work? How does this develop?
And as part of that discussion, how do you see you handle claims differently, if at all?
Yeah, well, I think Mike is clearly in a position where it's happening live. But as I look at it as an operations director in claims, there are a number of things. I think, from this perspective, I think a lot of claims, a lot of insurance companies and claims teams within that are kind of sleepwalking off a cliff with this, because this is fundamentally going to change the way you actually manage the claim. Talking to Mike and Mike's team and talking to others in the sector, including Alan and Nick. There's a whole piece here around when you get this data, you're going to triage it really quickly to decide whether or not this is a straightforward just pay it, or whether there's something else involved in here, which means that you can challenge and push back. Your operational profile is going to be different. Your resourcing profile, the skill sets you're going to need for your people in terms of interpreting the data. This is fundamental shift. Flip it over the other side. So you might not be in an insurance company that's actually moving into telematics. You might not be engaged with the conversations and development of the product. You could be an insurance company on the receiving end of somebody who has got telematics as the third party involved in an accident with one of your customers. How are you going to react to that? What are you going to understand with the data that's coming through? Are you just going to go, right, that must be right, and therefore I'm just going to pay out, it's obviously my customer's fault? Or are you going to have the skill set to actually interrogate that data and make different decisions around the claim?
Okay, so Mike, you've got some really interesting thoughts there, Ian. You've got the real life experience. You've been selling the policies and therefore handling claims for a year and a half of it. Are you fundamentally different in the way you handle claims to any other insurer?
Completely and utterly different. I mean, our ethanol process in our service centre in Newcastle, the box gives an alert where there is an active potential situation, we then phone up the customer, or contact the customer, and say, are you okay, do you need help? And at that stage we'll have a very good idea of what's actually happened to the claim, because we will know whether it's a frontal rear end, we will know whether the car's rolled, we will know the sort of level of impact, we know the location, we can see exactly where it is, the time of day. We know all of that information before the customer's even told us.
So how does that change things from the customer's point of view?
Well,
apart from the fact that you're phoning in and saying, no, Mr. Smith, we just had that accident.
I can give you 2 examples where this really does save lives, and this is the thing about telematics. It is a life-saving tool. We had a situation a few months ago now where the alert come in, G-Force 10, which is a big hit. Tried to contact the customer, no answer, looked to see where it was. Car was going down country lane just outside Exeter. We thought it had gone off the road. We thought that the car had rolled. The ignition was on, but it was stationary. We called out the emergency services. We got it absolutely right. That road was closed for 3 hours, and our customers were rescued. It was a young lad driving the car with his mum and sister in the car. They was all rescued, hospitalised. I mean, this technology does save lives.
This is a real example. Give me the second example.
The second one only happened a couple of weeks ago. Again, a big G-Force 10 alert. We looked to see where it was. I think it was down the M40. The customer had gone out of control, hit the central reservation, span round, landed on the hard shoulder. We phoned up the customer. They were completely traumatised. As you would be in that situation. We went straight into action. First of all, we got them off the road. In a motorway situation, your customers are exposed to other cars coming down, so you have to get them off the road quick. One of them was injured, called out emergency services, got them into hospital. It allows you to completely change the way you deal with your customers, and to me that's fantastic.
Adam, when you're selling your boxes, but the claims process is absolutely part of it, how is it going to affect the repair of the vehicle, the relationship between the policyholder insurer and the repairer? Just assuming it's not a write-off.
That's kind of new technology, and that's where we're going, I think, with the data. But my view is if we can predict the accident, and we know the direction of impact and the severity of impact, we can give the repairer a repair that actually is going to turn into a repair. So we know that it's because we know the pre-accident value of the vehicle. Through the installation process, we've got images of the car before the accident. We can make really robust decisions about the routing of the vehicle. That means you're not getting total losses in and moving 3 times. You can settle with the client if it's a total loss. But equally, if it's a structural aluminium repair, send it to the right repairer. Do it at the front end, don't distress the customer. And what we'll do is reduce the keys to keys time. Because you guys can get on doing what you need to do, and that's repairing the car as quickly as possible to the right standard.
I think it's quite interesting actually as well, because as I was saying, that richness of data you're going to have straight off, being able to match it in with accidents of a similar nature, therefore being able to advise the repairer potentially these are the parts that are going to be needed, etc. But also, if you think about how we're moving around trying to get faster on the key-to-key time, the repairer is potentially going to have that view to say, actually, can I smart repair this at the roadside? Do I put it through my fast track process? Is this going to be a heavier job? How do I schedule differently? Does this actually really help the repairer in terms of looking at their operational efficiency? But certainly as well...
It's going to put extra strain on them, mind you, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's going to put extra strain on them because they're not going to have that advanced notification. It's instant.
It could be.
The processes that currently exist in the claims process that you're just not going to need to do. If you know roughly the repair cost, just get on and repair it.
So would you see a sort of matrix that you have, or many insurers have, for avoiding total losses going to the repairer? A similar matrix saying, well, the vehicle is worth 5,000, it's had a 5G impact, therefore that's likely to be a total loss.
So I think, the great situation potentially is it never has to go to the repairer in that situation. So we can remove the issue the repairer's got of total loss racks sitting, blocking up the parking spaces, only getting a couple of hours for the assessment, take that out and actually have vehicles coming through that are repairable and moving that through. But I think, it is interesting, you asked the question, is it going to make it more difficult for repairers? I think, good repairers, and there are many in this room, are really on top of their processing and how they actually streamline and move repairs through their body shops. This is going to help because they're having more information up front rather than waiting for the vehicle to come in or having to mobile estimate it to actually assess what's coming through.
Is that how
let's not kind of avoid one of the challenges though, which is we're in a very low claim and repair volume environment, and of course the prevalence of telematics is also going to mean, in principle, fewer accidents.
Because of improved driving as a result of being watched?
Absolutely.
Mike, is that change in the claims relationship with the repairer happening?
Well, I mean, we're still in a learning phase, and our customer base is mainly new and younger drivers. So the average age of the car is something like 8 years, which is an interesting statistic when it comes to motor manufacturers with boxes. It's a different subject, but it's going to take 8 years to get through the cycle of whether a box is actually a car from a manufacturer point of view. But that's another issue. But
that would suggest you're also having a higher portion of write-offs than an 8-year-old average.
That's right. Yes. So it's very important to sort of manage that whole process efficiently. And but what the box allows you to do really is to take a more objective view of fault, no fault. Because a lot of customers, if you ask them, say, was it your fault? And most of them say, well, no, it wasn't my fault. And that sort of affects the whole sort of credit hire, put it into your workshop, your own workshop equation. Actually knowing whether it's likely that the customer's told the truth or not allows you to manage that claim in the most appropriate way for both your customer and yourself as an insurer. And the fault no fault is quite an important piece of information for so you can sort of protect your interest in the most appropriate way.
Ian, and I'll take some questions from the audience. Ian, do you see that happening then, that Mr. Smith had his accident, you're ringing him up saying, we've just had an accident, Mr. Smith, 10 seconds later he's undoing the seatbelt, and already the repairer's being dispatched with a courtesy car at that point?
Yeah, or the recovery vehicle's dispatched, or
the emergency services are called. This is a fundamental shift in our attitude to the way that we actually engage with the consumer at the point of claim. And that kind of, how can we help you, which should be what we're saying to the customer, but usually it's what's your policy number or can I have your registration number, is going to become more and more important in terms of interaction with the customer.
Okay, questions from the audience, please. Got one at the front, we've got microphones. Mark, we're leaping down the front here, just while he leaps there, because he's an old man these days. Can I just ask about whiplash claims and the potential impact that telematics could have on approving or disproving whiplash claims? Because that was a very topical subject at yesterday's government insurance summit.
I spoke at Lawrence Davidson's whiplash conference last year. Actually, an excellent conference, and learned a lot actually. And what was interesting there is that there was lots of presentations from biomechanics and Thatcham in terms of their test data, and it was, which really sort of demonstrated that it is quite feasible that you can get relatively high G-force at fairly low speeds. So David Cameron's talking about, and the government's talked about having a speed threshold below which you can't have a whiplash claim.
Which is based on the German model.
That's right. And it's quite, the test data shows that depending on the cars involved, depending on the person in the car, depending on the design of the headrest and the seat, all of these actually influence the degree to which a person can be injured, even at relatively low speeds. Now, we've actually looked at our own data in this context and actually seen a sort of two-way matrix between speed and G-force. So, and actually matched it with all of our personal injury claims. What was interesting is that our actual data completely validated those tests. In other words, if you look at speeds of less than, impact speeds less than 10 miles an hour, you can still get quite a range of G-force within that speed limit. So I think, if I remember correctly, only 15% of our claims were in a category of less than 10 mile an hour impact and below 2G, which would be the area where you would reasonably should be allowed to challenge for whiplash.
Yes.
So that's low speed, low impact. That only accounted for 15% of our claims.
Would you agree, Alan?
Absolutely, I think using the data and feeding into things like the Thatch and Whip kit, I think is really useful. I think the big benefit though is knowing the accident's taken place, making a call, a proactive call to the driver, and actually establishing how many people are in the car unit.
Yes.
It's all very well accepted that there is liability for the driver, but all of a sudden 3 weeks later the driver claims there were 2 passengers.
Yes.
And your driver can't remember. But actually asking the question inside the road.
They should be able to remember how they're in the car. Would you agree?
So again, it's not a silver bullet. What it's going to do is provide more data to make therefore more educated assessments on whether or not an injury could have occurred.
Yes.
Which is going to help, but again, it's not
definitive,
a panacea.
Because of the variables of...
But from an efficient insurance company perspective in managing that claim, I was absolutely right, because are you actually getting out, as we talked about, getting out to the site of the accident to get to the consumer really quickly? Is it just about your insured, or is it actually quickly getting there as well, so that you can capture the other party, particularly if you're cost of consumers in a fault situation?
Can we have the sound back up, please?
But quickly as well, therefore, into the capture the repair, capture the credit hire, and quickly get them into your own rehabilitation and legal support services, so you're controlling the cost of the
We're not going to be doing massages by the side of the road.
No, I think that's
a
nothing will come to that.
The data will prove that there is a high propensity for them to have an injury. So just deal with it.
We were talking about mobile repairs inside the road, mobile human repairs. Again, valid point out. We had a question at the front there.
Just quickly, Terry Gilbert for Fixed Auto. Without a standard, are you going to have third-party people questioning the information that they're getting from the boxes without a standard box? So to refute the claim as such.
By saying one box is better than another, and your box isn't as good as ours, we don't believe your data.
We'll only know when it goes to court, and whilst we've appeared in court, it hasn't been for a personal injury claim yet, but the data is accepted. Because it might come in a different format, it might come in a different flavour, but it's reliable, robust data from industry accepted sources.
Is there any challenge? Did you, Mike?
We've only ever given out our data with a court order. That's the basis that our data can only be released, and we've had plenty of requests from police, etc., for data which we don't give it.
Why not? Surely that would help the whole claims process, wouldn't it?
Well, it's as we saw in the previous presentation, this data is highly sensitive data, and one thing I would ask David Cameron is, would he mind having a box, so we could track where he was going everywhere. And this element of trust is very, very important, and insurance companies, as we've seen, are one of the least trusted organisations that there are, and so you've got to be very careful about your promises, and you need to be in a situation where you demonstrate that you are doing what you promised with this data. So it has to be extreme circumstances where we will allow our data to go.
Okay. Any more questions from the audience? Please, at the front here. Mark to the right here. Heather. Mark to the right here. And we have one question. Another question in the middle at the fifth row then.
Hi. I just wanted to ask if telematics are going to reduce fraud, cut whiplash claims, etc., and be such a benefit in perhaps bringing down the cost of claims and insurance. Cameron's already said it's the way forward. Do you think it will become mandatory?
Ian, let's start with you, Ian.
I think it's very different. Again, it's a great contextual presentation to have before our one, but you can see the level of consumer acceptance. I think mandatory is really difficult, particularly in the context of insurance and consumer choice. I think how this evolves is going to be really interesting, because maybe not the mandatory side, but to the thing, how much does actually the fact that the boxes are in the vehicle and the data is being collected, how does it actually evolve in terms of the way the government actually looks at this? So does it therefore become the way in which the government can introduce pricing for road tax?
That's the big fear, isn't it?
Which roads you drive on,
yes.
When you drive, how you drive, petrol taxing, again around mileage, and therefore how does this evolve from the insurance perspective into actually, do you almost pay on a mile driven basis, actually, clocking up like a meter, your gas meter.
Okay, you'd love it, Alan, if it was compulsory.
Yeah, fantastic. As a box manufacturer, I'd love to see it. Whether it'll happen or not, I don't know. I think there's a lot to still come out of this debate.
Okay, middle of the fifth row back, Mark. Mike, do you want to just add anything while the microphone's passed over?
I definitely don't think it would be mandatory, and I think it would be very stupid if it was. Everyone's got to have a choice. That's a consumer right. Motor insurance is already compulsory, and to make that have a further step would demand...
It might be a step too far.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have the question in the middle.
I'm coming with Conley from Williams Group. I'm a group body shop manager, and we represent the BMW franchise. And as you mentioned earlier, BMW have already got a lot of this data from the black boxes in the cars built in, and we already use it for all sorts of diagnostic techniques and everything else, and resetting of cars and all the things you do from a technical point of view. The surveys from the customer intelligence unit say that customers tend to prefer it if the manufacturer control the data. And with BMW, for instance, they've just introduced their new accident management program, which is free to every BMW car owner in the country, whether they bought it from a BMW dealer or not. And that obviously is designed to push the vehicles that are involved in accidents back into the repair network. Surely with, as I see this telematics developing and smartphones and technology, it's going to be speed of acquisition to that data that's going to be key to where that car ends up and how that customer is treated. And surely that can only mean closer relationships with insurers and manufacturers if they're going to gain access to that data, because I can't believe that BMW are just going to put this out to Mondial, who are the first notification loss of the customer picks the phone up or on his smartphone, it automatically directs it to them through choice when they buy the car, and the salesman sets all this up for them. Surely you're going to have to build closer relationships if you're going to hope to gain that data transfer at a very early stage.
Because otherwise, surely, in fact, Alan, you're going to have the situation where BMW are racing out to get to the BMW car, and so is the insurance company, because the insurance company puts its box in there. So both have been told at the same time there's a crash happened, and both are going to race to the scene to try and get there in first with their replacement car, and the insurer is going to want to direct it over here, and BMW want it over there.
I think it's absolutely valid. But I drive a BMW. I'm not aware of BMW's accident management program, and I'm not sure you've got my number. So when I crash, you're not going to be able to contact me. So getting the insurers and the manufacturers to have a joined-up strategy, in my experience, is pretty difficult.
Ian, what about you for future?
Listen, I think it's a really positive step in terms of developing the relationship.
But you're going to get into a clash then, aren't you? Because
I think that's where we,
go there.
and this, comes back to the standards question around vested interest and things like that. So actually, it's got to be positive. There is a dialogue with manufacturers and insurers. I think Thaction's got a key role to play in that. Absolutely vital that we're coordinated as an industry and coordinated as well from the manufacturer side. Those dialogues have, already started. To avoid the situation, ultimately, when it comes back down to it, that the consumer is actually worse off because of this technology being available rather than better off.
So you're good enough that too many people trying to help them.
Exactly.
Exactly. I guess, Mike, that doesn't affect you at the moment with an average 8-year-old vehicle, because not many legal policy holders.
People talk about motor manufacturers all the time. I have a very simple view that motor manufacturers have never really got their act together on insurance. Their motivation will always be selling cars and getting cars to their own body shops.
But of course, don't forget, Mike, they want to sell parts, because that's the big profit maker for them.
The parts,
shops.
but at the end of the day, I come back to what I said before. Telematics will only be acceptable to the customer if you create a product that they want to buy. This technology is moving so fast that a box that's in a car today will be out of date by next year. So what's likelihood is going to happen is you put another box in the car because it's going to deliver a better business benefit, which allows you to offer a better product and better services to customers.
So you're going to have the battle of the boxes?
Absolutely.
And there's a manufacturer stuck in the middle?
3 years into this, just under 3 years into it, we're on our 6th box. So the technology is moving very, very fast.
Okay, another question from the audience. We've got 2 more questions we can take. One from Mr. Murray here, and I saw one hand up going over here as well.
We'll be with you in a minute, Adam.
Oh, it's coming behind you to your right, Adam. Can we have the mic again back up here, please, Ryan?
The other thing as well is, you know, Aviva have gone to press saying actually they're looking at smartphones and the way the smartphones can actually be used. Now I know not everybody would agree that that's the way forward, but it does actually say we keep thinking about the box and the vehicle. Actually, this could be about the person actually taking that with them according to which vehicle they're actually driving.
Yes, the danger, of course, is the government wants the vehicle insured as opposed to the person insured for driving the vehicle, because it's easier to track the vehicle, but it's a very good point. Mr. Murray.
Hi, I'm Murray from Aviva. My question is to Mike. What happens to the customer information once the policy comes to an end?
We turn the box off, so we don't track that information to a customer once they've stopped their insurance. This is something which...
what happens to the data is the part B?
What happens to the data?
What happens to the data? It would be just like any existing data that you have on a normal customer. You would keep that data on record on your data warehouse. But it's, I think that the main issue which I'm more concerned about is that what happens to data once that insurance contract has stopped, and I know that it's not uniform practice to stop the box recording data. I think that's the issue, and
because you don't remove the box, you leave the box in the car.
The box stays in the car.
Yes.
And there is an opportunity, obviously, to keep recording data even when you're
no longer
in control of that customer. Yes.
Yes.
Which is
an interesting one.
An issue which you know, I think is questionable.
Yes, I think a lot of people might not like that, but we're getting away from claims on that one. There's a question down this front here. And this will have to be the last question, and then I just want to ask last one for each of the panel.
Sorry, Craig Budsworth from Glaziers. From what you're saying, with the body shops being instructed fairly promptly after an accident, this sounds really poor for independent body shops, because all these claims will be going to the insurance-approved body shops, not the independents anymore. Is that time to worry?
I think, you know, all insurance companies, as we know, work to optimise their repair network. It's always down to consumer choice. So we don't force customers to go into a repair network and give them choice, because there's really good reasons why they go in. We can get into the whole debate about, you know, the value or non-value of insurance repair networks. I don't think it's any worse news. I think it's actually about, you know, how good a quality service you offer as a body shop, and therefore whether or not the consumer chooses to use you.
But would it not suggest that more work will go into approved networks? Do you have a big percentage of work going into your approved network?
I'm not actually sure what that percentage is, to be honest.
It would just strike me in general to all three of you. If you know I've had the accident 5 seconds later, and you're ringing me up and saying you had an accident, Mr. Creswell, or our approved repair is on his way with a replacement car for you, well, hey, there's nothing else I want to have happen.
I think the reality is having awareness of the accident is going to improve direction into direct repair programs. That's going to happen.
A huge success in getting work into the DRP, so repair program is what you want as an insurer.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so just to summarise, is 1 minute each maximum. What effect is the growth, the massive growth I think we're going to see in telematics over the next year going to have on the whole claims process, and that's both for personal injury claims and for repair claims? And we'll start with Ian.
Okay, well, I think as I already said, I think this is going to bring a sea change. I think it's really, really imperative that insurance companies are involved in their claims teams in actually the development of telematics, the design of the product, the design of the service that sits around it, and really challenging themselves about how this means that we need to operate differently. And if that's not happening, then actually insurers are not going to get the benefit out of actually engaging with these schemes.
And that's something you're looking at as part of your...
Absolutely. It's great that we've actually got our business lead on telematics in the audience today, because he is so close to what does this mean from a claims perspective.
Alan?
I think it's good news for the consumer. I think it'll protect honest consumers and certainly deal with a lot of the fraud issues, if it's used correctly, that are around the industry today. I think from the claims perspective, it's going to streamline and make the repairing of damaged cars far more efficient. And that's only good, again, for the consumer.
And Mike, last words.
Well, I think this has got to be good news for the consumer, and because it's all about proactively getting to the customer in his hour of need and then dealing with him quickly and efficiently. And that's what customers want. But at the other end, it's also stopping the fraudulent element. You know, that is what the killer thing in terms of driving motoring insurance costs up. Telematics gives you a much more focused view on fraudulent claim activity. So, you can identify it, it allows you to concentrate on the fraudulent ones, wade through all the majority of the honest claims.
Huge big hand, please, for a great man.